here with Rohan Spong, and he is the director. Well, and are you the producer also?
No, there are two producers on the film, so I'm the director and the cinematographer. Yeah.
And then did you conceive this project also?
Yeah. So the film's called Winter at Westbeth, and it's a year in the life of Westbeth Artists Housing in the West Village. And the building would previously been like Bell Laboratories. It had been the birthplace of like the telephone, the television and whatnot. And now it's an artist community, rent controlled, and it's a year in the life of three of the artists: dancer Dudley Williams, poet Ilsa Gilbert, and dancer turned filmmaker Edith Stephen. So, and they range in age from 75 to 96, so it's sort of about the art that older people make.
You almost embedded yourself with them. You got to know them, they trusted you. So when you see the snippets I've seen already, which I'm dying to see, it's very personable, even with the audience.
Yeah, it's. I spent a year filming these three participants, and they become more than participants. They become your confidant. You become their confidant, and you become part of their lives, and they become part of yours. I was doing a panel yesterday. The film screening is part of Doc NYC, and I was doing a panel yesterday, and the filmmaker who was sitting next to me was saying that you really have to love the people that you film. You have to. There has to be like a common ground, and you have to want to spend time with them. So, yeah, it's a very personal relationship that I have with each of those people in the film.
All of these people were long-term residents.
Yeah.
I mean, like 30 plus years.
Yeah.
And so one of the beautiful things was you could see all of their lives on the walls behind them.
Absolutely, yeah. So I guess when you are an older artist, you've collected a lot of things. I mean, in the case of Dudley Williams, you know, his apartment is littered with Alvin Ailey and Martha Graham memorabilia. And there's little notes that we kind of glimpse in the film of, you know, Dear Dudley, I hope you do a great performance of Love Songs tonight, love Alvin. And there's really kind of beautiful little kind of features that help you kind of fill in what the history of this person's life must be and what it must be like to live in that space and to come to terms with that every day. So yeah, there's a lot of little detail that tells the story of who these people are and where they came from. Some of it's quite, you know, dare I say, funny as well. I mean, there's a great moment early on in the film where Edith Stephen is sitting on her bed, and she's 95, and she's sitting there and she's reading the Kama Sutra, and then next to her is her walking frame, and there's a kind of big Kama Sutra poster behind her on the wall, and I don't know, there's just something so beautiful about that image to me, that she still lives a life where anything could happen any given day.
Yes.
Yeah. And they're each such different people, but they bring something different to the film. I mean, Ilsa is quite a shy person very early on, and she writes this very, very candid poetry, so she's quite capable of expressing how she feels about her place in the world and this time of life. She had a mastectomy, she's had quite a few incidences of cancer, and I don't think she had anticipated living to 81, which is where the film finds her, and she's very philosophical about that. So she sort of brings a bit of heart to the film. Dudley is a very different character in the sense that early on he was not so keen on doing interviews. He said, I'll do the interviews later. So I mostly kind of shadowed him and filmed all of his activities, his classes, his rehearsals, feeding the pigeons, heading out for lunch, catching the bus. And he's incredibly witty. He's such a funny guy. And you know, thinking about filming the film now, there are so many instances where either he said something to me, whether it was off camera or on camera, it didn't matter, but it took me a week for me to like realize that he'd made a joke and for me to get the joke, just because his deadpan delivery. So there was a lot of gems in the rushes of him saying really hilarious things and me not laughing at the time because he was just too quick-witted for me. Fast one there, a live one there. And then Edith Stephen, she's just very, very colourful and vivid and outgoing. She's 95, fluorescent orange hair, green eyeshadow. It's the first thing she does every morning, and she's ready to take on the world. And you know, there's footage of her down at, in her early 90s, down at the Occupy Wall Street demonstrations and so forth in the film. So it's interesting that each of the three characters have a kind of political bent. You know, Dudley obviously has a connection to the civil rights movement, mid-century America. Ilsa, raving feminist, also, you know, an out and proud lesbian woman. And Edith had sort of socialist leanings early on, and certainly is very democratic and a member of the Democrat Party and really participates in the world around her. I think that we tend to assume that as people get older that they stop participating in the world, or that they stop engaging with the world, and I guess both, well, all of them really, all three character studies are wonderful people who are participating still in the world, and their art is an extension of that.
Now, I was going to ask you that, just listening to your comment. I find that a lot of people who are in the arts tend to be very politically savvy, very current events astute, and they definitely have an opinion other than, well, what will be, will be. You know?
In the film, when we were doing some of the interviews later on with Dudley Williams, it was during the period of time that the sort of police brutality against people of colour was kind of becoming more mainstream, or being understood on a greater sort of stage, just kind of around the time of the Black Lives Matter movement. And yeah, so he would be sitting on the couch talking about, you know, in the 50s and the 60s, being ejected from places, having to ride in a particular part of the bus, having to use a different washroom, and you know, he is quite aware and kind of ruefully admits after talking about that things really haven't changed that much on some level. So it's interesting also how one assumes that because these people have seen so much, that there's so much progress in the world, but they're quite capable of acknowledging that perhaps that's not the case.
So this film opens this Thursday.
Yes.
What's the date?
So it screens as part of Doc NYC. Now, Doc NYC is the largest documentary festival in America. They've got hundreds of films screening. So we're very fortunate to be screening in competition. And it screens Wednesday the 16th at 5 p.m. at IFC Centre, and then Thursday at 10:15 a.m. at IFC Centre. And Edith and Ilsa will be there to sort of participate in the screening, so you'll get to meet them. And there's sort of a few other characters who are sort of tangential to the storylines of those main three, so you'll see various other people in the audience that appear in the film, I hope. Yeah, and I'm an Australian, so it's a huge deal and a huge honour to be in New York to be screening at this festival.
Well, you picked three wonderful people
to
talk about it. And I remember during the process, the rapport you built with Dudley, I have to say this as friend to friend, he enjoyed every moment. He really did. You invigorated him. You gave him a purpose. He felt his voice was going to be heard. And now that he's no longer with us, that part of him will live on.
I was thinking about it on the walk up here actually, and I walked past this florist, and it's morning here in New York. And there was these roses, and Dudley had a lot of dried roses around his house, around his apartment, and there were these roses sort of sitting there, and I thought that's really what our relationship was like. Every morning it was like this rose, and by the end of the day it had revealed more of itself, and you know, had shared more of itself, and every day with him was like that. He was an utter joy to spend time with. I miss him terribly. I miss him, you know, as a friend, but when somebody kind of is candid with you and slowly reveals themselves to you as a filmmaker, as a documentarian, I mean, you can't ask for more. It's the most magical thing, and every day you could see that it was coming together on camera. It was a great professional experience as well as a personal one.
Yeah, so I'm so glad he had that experience with you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So the film is Winter at Westbeth.
Yes.
And it premieres on Wednesday. What's the date on Wednesday?
16th? Wednesday the 16th at 5 p.m. Okay. Thursday the 17th at 10:15 a.m. You can buy tickets in advance on the Doc NYC website, And there's a trailer there as well. You can tweet me, I'm at Rohan Spong. You can follow the film on Facebook, it's Winter at Westbeth. Get involved and come down and check it out.
Yeah, all of you should come down. The small snippets I've seen are not only inspiring, they're heartwarming. So all of you will get something out of this. Thank you again. Thank you again.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, my pleasure.
It's a pleasure.